and Canon Damulira, who are the directors of St. Mark College Namagoma. Many of you have possibly heard about St. Mark College Namagoma, but you possibly don't know the people behind it. And today they've been kind enough to come and share with us their story on how to run a family business effectively. How can you be able to build a business out of a family setting? Now, we all know that the majority of businesses are family owned, but families are not running businesses very well. Sometimes even both you, the proprietors, husband and wife, you are not communicating with each other. Sometimes someone says, you know what, this is my thing, and the family is a different institution altogether. That two can't mix. But here with us, we have a gentleman and a lady who have, to this date, managed to build a powerful brand in the education sector in the names of St. Mark's College Namagoma. And they have done this as a family. Mr. and Mrs. Damulira, we are very excited to see you. Please do turn on your cameras and say hello to us. I will allow you to just quickly introduce yourselves, tell us a bit about who you are yourselves, and then we'll get into our Q&A.
Thank you so much. Like they say, ladies first, I will allow my wife, Alice, to say introductory words, and then I will come in shortly after.
Thank you so much, Mr. Damulira, for inviting me to say something, and also Ronald. Thank you so much for thinking about us and letting us share our story.
Sorry, colleagues. I think we were having a bit of trouble.
We are sorry about where we are.
Yeah, I think
we have an alternative though.
We missed a bit of that introduction. I think there was a bit of buffering. Possibly, could we try the account with Mr. Daniel?
Mr. Ronald? Hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect. That's better.
Are we still in focus?
Yes, you are in focus. We can see you. Sorry
Okay.
about that.
No, it's well. So I was saying that when I decided to leave the International Committee of the Red Cross, it was a conscious decision. After 15 years experience, there is something that was very fundamental that spoke to me. And I always say this, many of our employees were actually fired, not because of their qualifications, but because of their character. You realize we have one person who is highly qualified, but because of their character, they lose their jobs. So I made that intentional decision. When my husband asked me to come and join him and work with him, I felt I was in the right place, and I'm excited to be working in the school. Thank you very much.
Dear members on this forum, this is Damulira Mukasa, and I'm proudly the director of St. Mark's College Namagoma. And I'm not a teacher by training. My background is in finance and accounting. I worked in a commercial bank as a loans officer during my first year after graduation. Then I joined central banking, where I was there for 11 years before I decided to move on and start a business. And in this case, it's a secondary school that we started. So that's me in brief. I'm a Rotarian, and I work closely with the Church of Uganda mostly, and I'm in many boards and committees of the church. So that's me in brief. So Ronald, that's what we can say about ourselves. We've been married for 26 years now.
Wow.
Somebody has written in the forum that they can't hear us properly. Can you hear us now?
Now we can hear you quite well. So I think when you're speaking, possibly you get a bit closer to the computer.
Okay.
We hear you.
Okay.
Super. Thanks a lot, and congratulations on the 26 years of marriage. It's always an exciting thing to see success both in the business and the business and the family, and it's an exciting thing. So we'll get into our conversation today, friends. We are going to have a conversation with Mr. and Mrs. Damulira. You have briefly shared with us, it appears both of you from a professional background, Mrs. Damulira working with the Red Cross, and Mr. Damulira in the financing sector. But we just wanted you to take us to the beginning of the start of the business. Where did the St. Mark College Namagoma dream start from? And why a school? Why did you choose to get into this sector? Where did that really begin?
Thank you very much. I think the story begins quite a long time earlier, but in me, I worked even in the corporate world. I always thought I would do my own business. I always felt that urge to start something for me. And so the story of the school comes at the time when I was at the central bank. We were involved in at that time, the IMF and the World Bank were forgiving poor countries their loans. And one of the exercises we were involved in is making projections for different variables in the economy, including economic growth and GDP and debt and population and all those kinds of things. One of the things we were looking at was population, and I realized Uganda's population was growing very fast, and looking at other financial government, I realized the government couldn't provide education for all the Ugandans that were being born at the rate of 3% per year. There were big numbers of people. I could imagine about 2,000-3,000 people born a day. And all those to be absorbed was a big challenge. So I saw an opportunity there. And I asked one of my friends who was in that sector of education, Mr. Selvan, you also have a school now in Uganda. And he told me, yeah, it's something you can do. For him, he was already a headmaster. And he said, yes, you can do it. I can guide you on what we have gone through. And so the idea grew. That was about 1990. I started managing the idea of school. So I visited different schools, international and local. I saw how they have started, and in 2000, we bought land in Namagoma, and then in 2003, in February, we started the school. Started the school running. So it was a journey, right from me thinking I should do my own business, and then looking at those variables, macros of Uganda for the next 25 years. And I thought, this is a place I can do a business for a long time.
Wow. A number of...
So do you still hear us?
Yes,
yes.
Yes, we can hear you. I think sometimes you dim out a bit, but I think when you keep close to the computer, we hear you. Yeah, I mean, a couple of very key messages Mr. Damulira has shared. One is kind of seeing the opportunity in the crisis we're having. You said you are looking at numbers at the central bank, and you noticed that actually there is a problem government can't solve, and that's where you found your opportunity. Many babies are being produced and they will have to be educated. And then also you talked about asking a friend and being able to kind of every sector we enter, there's someone who has been in it and people are willing to give you a hand. Many times people think there is no one to ask. And then this process of really just saying, you know what, we are on this journey and we'll first buy some land and then we will start the school. And I think for me that brings me to one of the key questions I wanted to bring in now, and the question of how do you, some of us see these opportunities, but how do you stick to it? I mean, you saw the opportunity sometime in the 90s, you started the school in 2003. How does someone say, this is what I'm chasing and I'm going to stick to it? Because many times as an entrepreneur, you want things which are a bit quick. You said you are looking at the school as something which can help you for a long period of time. But how do you keep your eyes on that goal that you have set? I mean, it's an ambitious goal. At school is a big thing. But how do you keep your eyes on that goal? Hello? Derek, can you hear me? George?
Mr. Ronald, I can actually hear you.
Okay, good. I think we have lost our...
I think it's a network issue they have. The bandwidth can't handle both the video and the audio at the same time. So we can go without
before that, I was in business. And let's try to fix it. We wanted to switch to something else. I hope you hear us now better.
That's better. That's better.
That's much better.
Great.
Okay,
great.
So let's use this other gadget. We knew we could have some problems, so we had an alternative.
Yes, please.
And I hope this works.
We can hear you clearly now.
Okay, if you can hear us, then we continue. We are saying we had done quite a few of other businesses. So sticking to this one, I'd realized that if you're going to do a business and succeed in it, first of all, you have to be available. You must have something that you think engages you fully. So when I got the idea of a school, I thought this is an opportunity for me to fully engage myself, but also to be available and work consistently. So I stuck on that, and I really did a lot of research in it, and I got convinced this was a good business for me to do. And I am happy to say that was a good decision to persist and continue with it. And that's, I think, something I always even advise my people, that if you are going to do something, you must be consistent with it. You need to look at different aspects of it and get to know about it, and then continue with it for quite some time.
Great. Super. Now, you both mentioned that you are coming from the corporate world and you had jobs. At what point do you cross over? Because for many people who have jobs, it's one of the scary things. Say, how do you know that business is ready to receive you from your job? At what point do you make that decision? Do you both cross over at the same time? Do you send one person and you see what happens? What was your journey like?
Thank you so much for that question, Ronald. Crossing over, it's not an easy thing to make a decision and say, well, now I think it's time for me to move on. But I remember at that time, Mr. Damulira made the calculations of the business. And in him, he felt like, if this is good enough, starting ground. So he left because he had moved out of the central bank and he had gone to USAID. And in him, he felt that it was important to go and supervise the school. We always have a saying here that says, you cannot expect where you don't inspect. So a tough decision was made, and he had to leave his workspace. That was USAID at that time. But he had also made a decision that he would not be there for more than 3 years. So everything was like they say that the best way to create the future is to predict it. You predict it mentally. So we were in agreement for him to actually move out of the corporate world. And then I had to stay in the corporate world. Much as the school started in 2003, I left my workspace in 2013. So I stayed there for another 10 years. Just in the event that things didn't work out in the way that we expected, there was always a fallback position. So I remained employed while he went to work and inspect and follow through the growth of the school.
Wow. So I think the message we are hearing is, one, there has to be a clear decision which is made. And there is a point there, I think, when you, as they say, bite the bullet and say, I have decided to take on the business. But I think, as you have clearly mentioned, Madam Alice, you hedge your risks, and you said you kept in the workspace for another 10 years, which allowed the family possibly some stability as the school was growing. And I think that's an important message, especially for those who are listening and they're in employment. And you and your spouse, I think these are conversations which you need to have. And I think possibly, Mr. and Mrs. Damulira, that's where the problem sometimes is. How do you choose who leaves? Because sometimes they say, who is going to be, none of you, both of you said you are not teachers. So why was Mr. Damulira sacrificed as the one who was going to start and run the school? How do you choose? Is it a need in the business that the business now needs a manager or needs a strong administrator? How did you come up to that decision that Mr. Damulira will move and take on this responsibility?
One thing I would want to say, and one thing I celebrate about him, we are gifted differently. And for me, I could see a gifted entrepreneur. So he was also willing to step into those uncharted waters. Very excited. Somebody who is excited to see a business start and grow. We are both trying to navigate, but he knew. And I always tell people who come at school, and they always ask one thing: how did you come up with these designs in the school, the walkways and so on? Mentally, you could see all that. What I couldn't see is what he saw. So usually I share and say, when you see your spouse gifted in a certain area, allow them and celebrate them, and make sure that they can be able to live up to their fullest potential. So between the two of us, he's the gifted entrepreneur. I always tell people I carry a typical employee mindset, but I've learned a lot from him. So when I come into the workspace, I'm a typical employee. He comes in as a businessman. So because both of us are different in that space, he was able to quickly make the decision that let me go and you stay behind.
Wow, wow, wow. Exciting. And I think, Madam Alice, you make a very powerful point about being able to see the strength of your spouse and complementing one another. I think that's an important thing. And sometimes possibly the person who can see you most clearly is your spouse. There are people who can say, you know what, as you have said, Mr. Damulira is a gifted entrepreneur, but being able to see that and allow him to do it, I think, is a powerful message which we could all be able to walk away with. But also, I think the fact that everyone has a role they can be able to play in the business, and it's okay to come with that experience into the business. So let's move on. I think my next question is, the school has started. What has been your growth journey? How did you start? How many students? Were your children the first two people you recruited into the school? How did you get that first group, and where are you at this point?
Well, thank you. This is quite an exciting thing I always share with people, and I'm excited to do that. Starting as a banker into a school was a real big challenge. Even my colleagues didn't believe me at the central bank. If you went to them and said, listen, Daniel, whoever, I've started a school, said, Damulira, you started a school, you are not a teacher. How can you do that? You know? And but I said I'm ready to do it, and I was ready to do it. And at one stage, some people are saying you're starting a school in Namagoma. Namagoma is not a known entity. Why don't you call it Nabingo? Because we are close. Said, no, we are purposing to build a brand of our own, and we're ready to do that. So there was a lot of conviction within me to go and start it. And there was quite a lot of preparation in that. But starting the journey is, we have opened up the school. I had to take leave. By then I was still in USA. I worked for 6 months after school starting. But that day I took off leave. I went and observed the first child coming in on that day. And we cherished that boy. He was an H3 boy. But on day one, we had 13 students who came. None of them was ours. But from colleagues, I had a few colleagues who really trusted me. One of them was Jane Nakato. I worked with her at USAID and said, Daniel, you started the school? Listen, I'm giving you my niece. And she gave me a niece. There was another one, Namatov also. I worked with her with USAID. Said, Daniel, you started the school? She gave me another niece also of hers. And the journey started. But most importantly, I had Mr. Senyonja I talked about. He was in a school which was already grown, and they had excess students they couldn't take. So he gave me his deputy headmaster, be my first headmaster. And whenever people went to his school, he said, you know, we have started a new branch. And my deputy is there. And I will not forget the support Mr. Senyonjo gave me to start that school, and I'm forever indebted. And the rest is history. After term one, we got about 60 students. By the end of the year, we had 153. So that's how it started. But it was a challenging environment. You are not a teacher. You are going to convince people that you started the school. You are known in banking, but with consistency and also prayer, some bit of hard work, we managed to break, and people begin to recognize that we are capable.
Wow, so, wow. Powerful message, powerful message. I hear Jane Nakato. Jane Nakato is, I think, appropriate of a school also. Is that the Jane Nakato of Kindercare?
Yes, please. And actually, it's our encouragement as well. I said, listen, I've started, it works. You can come.
Super, super, super. I mean, very many powerful messages there. The fact that usually you start with the people who are closest to you, people who are willing to take a chance on you. Say, you know what, here is my niece, here is my son. And I find Mr. Senyonjo a fascinating person in the industry. You know, many people believe that if someone says they're starting a school, your response should be to make it as hard as possible for them because they are creating competition. But it's fascinating that that here is an entrepreneur who says, you know what, you're starting out. Here is my deputy headmaster to go and start that process and be able to get there. I think it is, and to even say that this is another branch, I think it is. It's a powerful statement there. But I think the lesson to those of us who are listening is the idea that people are willing to help. Entrepreneurs hold each other's hands, and I think for me that is a powerful statement. Where I met Mr. and Mrs. Damulira, I think you talk about that community in a moment, but it's fellow school owners holding each other's hands to be able to win. So for me, it's a powerful statement. Now, I think the school has begun. You have started. You have over 150 students at the end of the year. How do you juggle this growth? I mean, there are more students. I don't know how many blocks you had built at that point. How did you juggle that growth of more students are coming? You need more teachers. Sometimes the money is not coming at first. How did you juggle that growth in the initial stages?
Well, that's a very, very interesting question. How do you juggle this? When we started, we had two blocks. We would divide them between dormitories and classes. And actually, what helped me is my background in banking. I was a loans officer before, so I thought about going to bank. I was very good with DFCU. I had colleagues there. One of the Bank of Uganda, he was an auditor there. So I went to them and I said, listen, I've started the school. I'm fully committed to it. I've even left my job. They're fully. So please give me a facility. So in the first year, I managed to get a facility from DFCU Bank. And they have been great partners, and we continue to be great partners up till now. They have financed most of our growth needs. And I've always been careful and good to them also. I've managed to take what I can afford to pay back each time I'm going to bank. And, like bankers, they always say, you can take more, but I've always been cautious to take what I think we can. So we have really worked closely with the FCU Bank, and most of our growth has been financed by the FCU Bank. And they are friends too. I can't forget to tell you about friends who have been there for me, for us. We have a friend, really. I can't fail to mention him or Augustine. The one time we had about 10 acres of land next to us available. It was December. We don't have any monies alongside with us. But when we sat together, we prayed about it somehow. And this, Ronald, I can tell you, God directed us to this very man. I knew him from Bank of Uganda. He used to have some small savings. He was a good saver. He would save liquid cash. So at one time, when this opportunity came, my mind ran to him. I prayed about it. I went to him and said, listen, we have this opportunity, 10 acres next to us. And luckily enough, we had balances. He had just been on consultation in West Africa. And he had told me the story. I've just been there. That's why I've been lost. So I have money deposited on Barclays, the bank account. And I told him, I need that money. I have this opportunity. So these things came, and he had known what he was doing. He had also given me some of his nieces and nephews to start us off. So in addition to the banking, we had friends there. He gave me money to buy about 10 acres without a security, without anything. So these are things that you go through in a journey, and you can never forget about. So banking, friends, and family also.
Wow. And I think the word which cuts through there is to be careful with the money, careful with the resource, be a good steward of what you have been given, irrespective whether it came from a bank or it came from a friend or a family member. I think that's a very powerful message, because a few people have taken the path of, I think I can lose this friendship. The man gave me his money, I'll just not pick his calls, and I will move on with my business. But I think, as you have rightly said, at times someone can trust you with a big amount of money without even any kind of security. And that in itself is a powerful statement. And I think it's one of the things which comes through from this conversation. I just wanted to push a bit more on the banks. I know that people have had mixed relationships with banks. Whenever you meet an entrepreneur who is struggling, chances are there are two specific institutions they talk about. They talk about URA and they talk about the bank. And usually it's one or the other who is putting the final rope around their neck. So the question is, and you're in a sector which needs credit in a way. I mean, parents don't pay on time. Sometimes you have big infrastructure projects which can't be financed by school fees. How do you build a sustainable relationship with the bank so that you can say, I have a partner who understands me and who I understand to be able to grow this business?
Well, I think the first thing to do with the banks, and before even you go to the banks, is to be honest. I've met people, there's a colleague of mine who was said, Mr. Damulira, I'm also going to resign and start a school. He said, okay, do some bit of calculation. If your bank gave you money now, you build a school for 10 billion, 1 billion, 1.5 billion, and how many students are you going to get? What through the cash flow. It is important to be honest with yourself and your business. You know, the banks, I knew, they always want you to. There has been some connection problems there. Somebody was fine. But yeah, banks is to be honest with them. Just be honest with yourself, be realistic in your business expectations, and work with them honestly. One of the things I've seen is don't divert money that the bank has given to any other thing. And this is something we have done. If we go to borrow to build a dormitory, that's what we do. And every time the banks have come, they have discovered that the money we have borrowed has been put to use. Of course, there are issues with the banks. Sometimes they are not as fast as you want to be. There are opportunities which come and the banks are like, bring this, bring that, please check here. Now you're Mr. Damulira, you are the key person. You have to get this insurance here and there. Those are issues which sometimes you have to be patient with. But if you are genuine in your business, you are doing good calculations a bit, I think it's possible to work with the banks well. They will bring all these other requirements of theirs. Yeah, you go through them and you plan well in advance. If you want a loan in 3 months, you start now. Don't wait until you have two weeks to the need and you go to the bank. That the bank will not help you. You really have to plan a little bit ahead and be certain of the good thing with the schools, you know, when the term starts in January or February or May, you will have some cash flow. So you compute things around it there and work with them. But also there are people, the bank is not a block there. You talk to the people, many of them would appreciate. And to some extent, when they knew I was a bank myself, they would treat me like, oh, these things you know, so let's move together and work together. So yes, communicate with the bank and be honest with yourself first, but also you must be honest with the bank as well.
Super. Make sure you're honest. Don't divert the bank money. Plan in advance. I think that's a powerful message. If you want to get a facility, there is a lead time. So you need to process and make sure that there is a timely process. Lovely. I think we can turn now to the family. We're discussing family business. And I think one of the things which is most fascinated is that for the first time, we have been running the recovery series for about 2.5 years. We have never had two people on the same flyer. You are the first people who, a husband and wife, who have come on the same flyer to be able to share with us. So how do you make sure that you grow the business and you grow the family at the same time? How don't these two institutions kind of clash and cause a problem? I think actually Mr. Kuloyera asked the same question. How do we ensure that the family is growing together and there is that coherence in the business and in the family? How don't you mix the two institutions? Where should they meet? And how do you use them to be able to grow?
Thank you so much, Ronald, for that question. And many people keep asking us, how do you work together? How come you wake up in the morning, you leave the same house and you go to the same place to work together? But like I said earlier on, that when you know your gifts, well, when we go to the workplace, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you now. You dropped for a bit, but we can hear you now.
Okay. So when we go to the workplace, like I said, I have an employee's mindset. So for me, it's about work. It's about results, goal-oriented, result-oriented in the workspace. So in other words, we are building systems and managing the employees. And that's where it's, you have the school And for me, when I look at the school, it's the seed that we have. And then we need to manage the process so that we can see the harvest at the end of the day. When we go to our workplaces, people know that this is where our bread is buttered. So I am also fully aware, our children are fully aware that this is where our bread is buttered. So we need to make sure that we give it our best when it comes to working with the institution. It doesn't stop us from working extra time or going the extra mile all the time, because this is where we earn from. Then Mr. Damulira comes in with the entrepreneurial mind, and he speaks, we need to grow here, the business this side, we need to, in this direction, we need to move in that direction. So in a way, it has helped us because we are gifted differently and we're managing differently. And we know that if we manage the employees, you cannot have an institution without managing the employees well. So we need to manage the employees, we need to manage all stakeholders, and this is very critical at the end of the day. It's not about just having a name of a school. What happens internally is also very important.
I just want to add, Ronald, here that what Mrs. Damulira has been talking about, recognizing individuality, is very key if you are going to succeed together. And you don't have to fight for space. There's a lot of work in school, a lot of work that you can divide it in a manner that is consistent with your natural talents. When it comes to finance and infrastructure, it's, for me, it's second nature. It doesn't take me a long time to know here we can make money, here we can lose money. This can move us as this pace, this risk we can take. So when it comes to finance, when it comes to infrastructure, some people think I'm an engineer, which I was supposed to be, but I enjoy that. If you have to work with generators, what capacities, if you are working, what water system, the reservoirs we build, those one to me is okay. And Mrs. Damulira, for her, like in a school setting, we are nurturing students. She's very good with the youth. She can tell them what they don't expect, but what they need to hear without blinking her eyes. And we divided the roles like that. Actually, in a manner, our schools, people know me as the hardware and Mrs. Damulira as the software. She deals with those values, bringing speakers to mentor children. Excellent. She knows how to tap the Ronalds to come and talk to these people. That's not my good area. But when it comes to the rocks and concrete, well, I can do it even in sleep. So we divide. She takes her bit of the journey, and we don't conflict normally. One or two issues we say, but we resolve them again because for common good.
Wow, wow, wow. Understanding the roles and the strengths of each of the partners and allowing them to be able to cherish in that. As Mr. Damulira has mentioned, I've been privileged to speak to the team at St. Mark, especially the team of staff. And I think it's just appreciating how we can be able to grow one another. And that for me is a critical thing, because sometimes it feels like in a family business, people are on a collusion course. And when someone is doing this, they also want to do exactly the same thing and do it differently. So, and that becomes a problem. We're going to get into a couple of questions as we continue. I see Asfa, he has his hand up. Please, Asfa, go ahead and ask your question. George, Derek, help me give Asfa an opportunity to be able to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Ronald, and the discussants, Mr. Daniel and Jane. I am pleased for the discussion, and I have a question concerning about your roles. You have said that Madam is a software, your hardware. In a bit that clarifies my question, but I wanted to look at it at the level of management and the specific business functions. What exactly does your management structure look like? Would you say she's the HR and I don't know. My question is about the management structure. How does it look like? Thank you.
Super. Thanks a lot, Asfa, for that question. Possibly as you answer it, you could just speak a bit more to the question of, I think Madam Alice talked about the question of human resource and how you manage and get the best out of people. But I think Aspa wants to know, how is the structure? Who does what, and how are those roles distributed? I do know that even in your management structure, not everyone is a family member. You have people who are not members of your family. How do you design that? You could just speak to that question.
Yeah, I think this is a very important question, and sometimes it bothers people. When I just left the bank, there was this discussion about separating management and ownership, and I did it. I did it for a couple of years, but I discovered that selling the vision and running around to bring this to fruition requires individual effort. And we have a headmaster, we are directors, we have a board, which is mandatory for schools and which is helping us so much. And above the board, we have the directors there overseeing mostly the strategic aspects of this school, and with some guidance and mentoring for some of the new people. So mostly I'm looking at the business interests at the level. In finance, like I said, most of these financial decisions of growth are made by me mostly and approved by the board. Now, Mrs. Damulira is working on the HR side mostly, and she's guiding all these other staff in terms of mentorship and values, spiritual growth. That is an area she emphasizes. So she works with people in that area to make sure they grow that one. For me, I work with the contractors, people who are building, agreeing on deadlines and timelines, and making sure these projects are financed and in good time, so that by the time next begins, we are ready with these buildings. So I'm focused more in that direction. But we have an administration, we have a teacher who is supervising all these children, managing relationships with the parents, administering, making sure the teachers meet the set deadlines in their execution of the work, and that the whole institution is smoothly working, the dormitories are clean and those kind of stuff. He manages relationships with the Ministry of Education and UNEB. So there are different categories of things we do. So we divide work like that, and we end up coming out with a good complete thing. So we are not too many there. The school is now quite big, over 2,500 students, and that's quite a job. Provide what they need, water, medical facilities for those kind of people. It's quite some work. So each one of us find what to do there, but mostly for us, we are on the strategic angle. Mrs. Damulira in the HR mostly, and me in the finances and infrastructure.
Super. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for that response. There are a couple of questions coming through. Friends, feel free to put up your hand if you want to ask a question. There are a couple of questions which have come in the chat box. I will ask them. Martin says, how do you handle tough emotions as a couple when running the business together? I think Andrew's question is, sometimes you have had a disagreement at home and you feel like the best thing is to leave your wife at home and you go and work so that you can cool down. But both of you have to go in the same car to the same place. So how do you handle those emotions on your journey? Then Millie says, what do you do when the business cannot raise enough money to pay both of you? My business cannot pay me. I am just imagining if there are two people. So what if the business can't look after, especially I think during that growth journey, there is a point there where the business is struggling to look after both of you because you have responsibilities as a couple. Peter Chambade asks, how do you handle money? Money has separated families and even business partners. So that's Peter's question. Moami Chambade, how do you handle money? It's usually a cause of separation, even of business partners. Yes.
Somebody has asked about how we handle tough emotions.
Yes. Possibly
we
you had.
We have some bit of interruption, but now you can hear us?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, great. the question is, how do we handle tough emotions? We stay in the same house, live in the same car, and go to the same destination, you know? And yes, I want to say that there's always disagreement. On certain things, you disagree on certain things. But like I said earlier, there is nothing as powerful as recognizing somebody's strength. In other words, you may have disagreements, but you will allow yourself to say, well, we disagreed on this, but probably let me sit back and try to understand, where is this person coming from? That is one. The other thing is that both of us are very, very interested in the school as an institution on different fronts. We're very, very interested in the school and to see it grow. So many times you choose to bury the hatchet and say, you know what, this is not important. And the other thing that I would also, the school keeps you very busy. That, you know, I have a friend of mine who would always say, that I'll say it in Uganda, papa time, that bwetuba tukyazizza omugenyi oluyombo tuluteeka mu kabada mugenyi bw'agenda oluyombo ne tulugjayo, you know, that kind of thing, that when you've disagreed as a couple and there's a visitor who comes through, you decide to say, you know what, let's hold arguments. When the visitor goes, we shall start from there. But this is what I would want to say. Because you are pursuing things that you are interested in, where there are opportunities. At times when you go and do the things that you love, it is a healing process. It is very therapeutic. That when you come back, you feel like, okay, wait a minute. We're having an argument over this, but I think I can choose to let it rest, because I have had a great day actually doing the things that I love. So that is where we're coming from. It is, yes, you'll have the disagreement. Yes, you probably have the strong emotions. But at the end of the day, we all fall back into things that are therapeutic for us. So on different fronts in the school, we have therapy. You go there, you meet the students, you meet the staff, you meet parents, you engage with them, you empower them, you come back feeling a much better person. The other thing that I would want to say, when we go to the workspace, for those who have been at St. Mark's College Namagoma, it is quite vast. So we can leave home, go to work, and we never meet until the end of the day. Yet our offices are quite close. When Mr. Damulira gets out to manage the infrastructure, and I stay in the office to deal with the human resource issues, we end the day. And each one of us has you drive back home and you tell him, I have left, I'm tired, I'm going back home. So it is like we're in the same space, but actually because we're doing totally different activities, we end up, you know, managing our spaces, being emotionally stable in that space, and then coming back, you know, on a different page. Like you leave home and go to work. When you come, given the experiences of the day, you come back home and it's a different story.
Yeah, when it comes to how do you manage the salary, if it's not enough for both of you, yes, actually at one time, it wasn't enough when we started. And really that insurance of Mrs. Damulira staying behind for work for the 10 years was very important. And because she would finance some aspects of business during that growth stage, like at her work, we had insurance for her and me and the children. So medical was not an issue then. She was earning a salary. I can tell you honestly that at one time when I left, I had a loan with Barclays, and sometimes things became tough. And she was banking in the same bank. When things became tough, she said, no, instead of taking my husband quote and whatever, you cut from my salary. And I want to tell you, Ronald, God is good. Her salary was increased to a manner that it was enough to pay my monthly installments. So those are things that happen in life. So somebody may not believe them, but because we all believed in school and we honestly believe in it, where we have differences, even if we don't allow them to go into school. That one is a space. We don't allow our differences at home to go into that space. We believe we need to work on it independent of our differences.
Wow. Powerful message there. The fact that actually, in a way, you are lifting each other. I think it was Millie's question on on the what you talked to Mr. Damulira, that idea that actually this is our job. It's looking after us at this point as the business grows. And when it grows, then the business can be able to hold us together. So if there is any case why you actually want to have a good relationship with your spouse in the business, it's because in a way, one kind of can cover another during the challenging journey. I think if you're alone, it can even be more challenging. Where does the money actually come from? But as you have said in the example you have given, it becomes a door which can be used to go through this challenging part. There are a couple of more questions which are coming through. I'll ask them. Please, if you have a question, don't hesitate to put up your hand. I think I'll turn to Caroline Mukisa. Caroline Mukisa. Caroline says she's a sole proprietor. On top of the farm, I have accommodation facilities which are in the village setting and therefore take long to pick up. Do you think I should employ a manager even when the accommodation is not picking? I manage the farm so well. My issue is the guest house. Mine isn't a family business yet. Kids are still young. I think Caroline's question is that she's in a setting where she's alone. She's I think a single mother. The children are young. The farm is in the village. The accommodation is not yet on point. She needs to be in the farm, and she needs to look after her children. How do you juggle that? What piece of advice would you give her? You can possibly read her question and pick a bit more. That's what I picked from there. Laura has advised, yes, employer manager and admin person who can also help you with the business. Barbara Katende says, Mr. and Mrs. Damulira, thank you so much, Mr. and Mrs. Damulira, for the inspiration, insightful, and candid discussion. That's a thank you message from Madam Katende. Thank you. Scovia says, me, after reaching in Turkey, I found problems. I don't think I fully understood Scovia's question. I'll possibly read it and then get back to it. Gidudu asks, there are stress periods financially, but more I want the Damuliras to talk about how they went through that COVID period, especially you as school owners. I think that was one of the hardest blows for the entire sector. I think particularly for schools, it was even harsher. How did you walk through that question? Judith says, I joined late, please forgive me if this question is repeated or has it been addressed. Please share on the organization structure. Yes, Judith, I think Mr. and Mrs. Damulira will share briefly. They touched on it, but they will share. I see a hand, but let me pick Christine's question. Speak on the business community, speak to business community cognizant of the number of failed family empires in the region. I think Christine is asking a question which I think we're going to get to. How does the family empire keep growing? It is a tough question because you're running a family business. I know that possibly your children are of age now. How do you reflect on this conversation of the empire keeping on growing? I'll give Abdallah an opportunity to ask, and then I'll ask Martin to also ask a question. Abdallah, please go ahead. Abdallah, you have the floor. Mr. Kaduyu is not coming through. Let me ask Martin. Martin, please ask your question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good morning to our guests. Good morning to our host, and good morning to everybody. I have 3 questions I want to throw in very quickly. Am I clear?
Yes, we can hear you. Quick 3 questions.
Thank you very much. I have known the Damuliras since I was a young boy, and that is good to hear. Number 1, we talked about many of us are young people starting up businesses, as in starting from a small capital. Our guests are telling us about starting by going to the bank and getting a loan and working experiences. Many people don't have that. You take the little capital you have and start. How would you advise people who are starting from what you may call meager resources, meager starting capital? Number one, that is number one. Number two, the human resource, especially teachers, are a big challenge to the education sector, especially from the aspect of the employer. You recruit teachers who they come with all the zeal and energy, and they want to practice. Okay, they apply and say they want to teach, and you recruit them. Even after vetting them, you verify them, but along the way you find, one, they either jump out, we like to say they terminate themselves, or two, you find that they don't have, what should I say? They don't have the will or the willingness. All they're doing is working for money, not working to teach as yet you want to do. How would you also advise a small startup to handle the aspect of teachers in the human resource sector? Finally, the biggest challenge also for entrepreneurs is that you start up a school. I've seen that from many people I'm talking to as I learn. I have a nursery school also we started up. As people are starting up schools, they pick it up and run for the next 5-10 years because you're there. How do you hand it over? Who is your successor? How do you pass it on? If it's a family business, you find some of the children have grown up, but they're not interested in the field you are running, like in education. Your children will grow up and become lawyers, lawyers, they'll become engineers, they'll join other fields and not education. How do you handle the aspect of passing on of succession? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Martin, for those questions. Mr. Moses Sewagala, please go ahead and ask.
Thank you very much. I have one question or two. This is what I hear, that people have challenges in working with the relatives, like maybe working with your wife. Okay, it was said a bit, but maybe working with your children. How do you handle, just in case one of your closest relatives has made a mistake? How do you handle? I'm talking about disciplinary measures. How do you handle that? To discipline someone who is very closer, maybe your husband or your wife or your children or your muko, among others. How do you handle that? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Moses, for those questions. Mr. and Mrs. Damulira, you take those, then we could possibly have one final round.
Quite very questions. I must tell you, one of the questions that every entrepreneur is looking at is the continuity. And the work in progress we have. My strong belief that a business to continue, there must be somebody with a permanent interest, somebody who wants to see it grow, and not only for tomorrow that I get a Saturday or something like that. That person, and ideally should be either children or wife or something. And I must tell you, my encouraging Alice to leave work after those years, despite some of the insurance she was getting for us, it was to really entrench herself also. It is one thing to know, to see how things are moving, and it's another thing to exactly make them happen. So coming to be part of it is building some bit of. But one thing I must say is it's not something to say I've done. We talk at family level. I've told my children, if this fails after I've gone, you will have failed. And sometimes you see them beginning to show quite very good interest, asking pertinent questions on how things are done. And but I can't say we have done it all. I remember one mistake. Is it a mistake? Perhaps Alice did. She grew up with a father who said, for me, all my things are mine. For you, when you grow up, you must make your own things. And she told this to our children. And at one point, when I was encouraging the children to get engaged, he said, but Daddy, Mommy said, those are your things. And we're saying, no, listen, that. it's not entirely it. You really must know what is going on, because this is where we get bread. So sometimes these conversations are tough, but we are encouraging children to get involved when they have opportunity. They come and take some of these things. Somewhere we disagreed. At one time, I thought they would study in St. Mark and at least know through experience what we do and look at us. And my wife was like, they will not be taught well. Teachers, we imagine these are their directors as well. So it's better to keep them away from here. So that continuity is a work in progress, but we are doing our best to make sure somebody is seeing what we do and they can pick it from there. But one comment I want also to make is on how do you manage when there are stressful times. COVID was a really, really trying moment. One of the things we did at St. Mark was to communicate, because the most affected people were the teachers. We had the employees and we had no income. But we talked, and I think we had one of the best experiences. Our staff had the best experience in the COVID. We agreed and we shared the meager resources that we have. Whatever we had, we shared genuinely together. And the teachers of St. Mark were so appreciative. And I must tell you, when we ended COVID, most of them came out and said, directors, we owe you. We must do something to make sure you're happy. And they really worked so hard. And next year we go to results we have never got before. So it is working and communicating. The resources will never be enough, but it's important to communicate. I come from a banking background. Each time our salaries were paid on the 25th. If I don't pay salary by 25th, I'm like, I've failed. So I know it is everybody's requirement to get the salaries on time, and we pay on time. And that we have done for the last 21 years. We have been working, not a single. But in COVID, we agreed with the teachers, we cut the salaries and we shared whatever we agreed to share in that moment, we shared again. But we thank God, most of the time we have managed the resources well, and we haven't got into those major financial crises. Those two people we talked about, the banks and the tax people, we deal with them professionally, and we do what we are supposed to do. We have not had those major crises time was coming, they are closing our accounts or agency notices. We have tried to manage the finances well. And it is to be prudent. One of the things we have promised our parents also is, when we are managing these resources, we are frugal. We are not so extravagant. When it comes to procurement, we really try to see we get the best services at the best price, not necessarily the lowest, but the best price. That is something I can say about the challenge of these teachers and what she knows how to talk to employees.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Damulira. So when it comes, somebody asked, probably Mr. Damulira will answer that, starting a business with very meager income or resources. I think one thing that we should know, that businesses, they are living things, they grow. So when you start small, allow yourself to grow gradually and not to actually all of a sudden, have an explosive business that is out there and everybody's celebrating. So whatever you inject in, that little investment, allow it to grow by doing what is required of you. But I'll talk about the teachers as HR. Yes, we always have teachers coming and going out, or when you come, you bring them in. You expect you've engaged them in an interview, you're excited, and they're coming on board and they would want to transit. I've been in the HR space. When somebody wants to leave, let them go. But make sure you create standards that speak of your vision. That when somebody comes into your space, they are supposed to rise up to that standard. You don't just employ anybody for it doesn't matter how good they are or how good they come off. Build a standard for yourself and for the institution. Make the bar so high. For us, one of the things that, because this is the stakeholders, these are children, it means that a teacher should have the values that speak or influence the children in the right direction. So for us, the behavior interview is very critical. We can even speak to ourselves and say skills can be grown, you know. I'm a professional teacher, I've just started out, but I can grow my skills. But character and attitude, somebody comes with them, you know. So when it comes to the HR, pick on the best teachers. We have so many institutions now that are channeling out human resource. So do not hold on to people. When they want to leave, allow them to leave. Continue. At the end of the day, you're going to get the right people in the right positions. What we usually say, the right people on the right bus, in the right seats. The other thing is to always grow the human resource, hold workshops, mentor them, direct them, guide them, identify their strength, so that when it comes to the promotional exercise, you consider your own first, because they understand the culture of the school. So this is very, very important. We need to invest in our human resource. When we're in the corporate world, they were always invested in. Our employers would invest in us because they knew that professionalism is a growth journey. So then the other thing was about working with relatives. How do we manage when it comes to disciplinary measures? We have relatives working with us, but I'll tell you, when you come to St. Mark, you don't come in as a relative, you come in as an employee. So we make demands and we say, you're coming on board as an employee. When we get out of this space, we go wherever we shall be, it will be family. But now you're coming in as an employee. We're talking to one of our sons who was just going back to senior 5. So I told him, you are late for work. Work starts at 8. You don't show up at 10. You come at 8. Because that is the standard. The finance office opens at 8. But then also the other thing that is interesting, because when you set standards for yourself, people begin to have the culture of what speaks. So for me, it's not about whether it's a relative or not. It's about being a good employee. And when this person falls short, you relieve them of the duties. It's not about that when you go to the village, then there'll be a habalu, or when they come, they'll never come to your parties. It is okay because they failed to meet that standard. So set standards for yourselves, grow your employees, and make sure that whether it's a relative or not, they have to meet the mark.
Super, thank you so much, Madam Alice. Tough one. After firing cousin, and you are in the village together, and your father is asking you, how do you fire your own blood? But as Madam Alice and Mr. Daniel have shared, it's a job. You are there to do work, and it's important that that message is communicated. I also like the point you made about you as a director, the standards you set for yourselves. If the standards are high, you find that the entire team you lead also raises to those standards. Great. We have time for possibly just one more round of questions. We'll pick them. Judith asks, do you have shareholders? How did or would you advise on shareholding in schools? I think there's another question which I'll ask just a little later, which is in that direction. So beyond yourselves, are there other shareholders? Ibrahim asks, how are decisions being taken since Mr. Damulira works with the spouse? I think they have spoken to that question, but I think you can possibly touch it again. How do decisions be? I think you have clearly shown that everyone has a role, and that role is clearly seen. Madam America Koza asks, is there any moment where your efforts were not recognized among yourselves? And I think this is an interesting question. Sometimes you feel like your spouse hasn't recognized how much you have put in. Possibly Mr. Damulira is supervising a site and has to stay at school up to midnight. And when he walks home, he doesn't feel like he's appreciated for the extra effort he has done for the business. And the same is true possibly for Madam Alice. So how do you deal with that? That's Mary's question. Yvonne just says, thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Damulira, for a very insightful discussion. Rotarian Dr. Muhindo, this is his question. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Damulira, for the insightful discussion about work as a couple. I would like your support. I like that support which has nothing to do with Senteze Chikazi. I think he's speaking to your point, Madam Alice. I think Dr. Muhindo appreciates the fact that here the money will help to the whole family. I think he makes the analogy here of Senteze Chikazi. Possibly make a comment on that. There's some money which you need to keep on the side and it shouldn't come into the business. Rosemary says sometimes people have passion in an area, but how do you market? How do you do market research to know that the idea actually works and becomes successful? How? I mean, you talked a lot about Mr. Damulira about the research you did at the beginning, but how do you know it will work, or it is still you step in with faith? Annabelle. Yes, Annabelle has made a message there. I think it's a communication. Dr. Vincent, let me just run to the questions because our time has run. What are your views of getting a partner who can inject cash into growing business, an equity partner? Are they viable options for profitability, but that can help a business which is struggling to be able to scale? I think please speak to getting an equity partner, not someone who is giving debt, but someone who is buying a share into the business. Stella says, thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Damulira. How do you manage to engage parents who come at the beginning of the term without enough school fees, but when it comes to completing the fees, it is a challenge? I think this is a big problem for every school owner. How do you manage to engage those parents? Even patients need to a business. There is patience needed in a business. For starters, yes. Judith says about the organizational structure. I think Mr. Damulira will touch on that question again about the organizational structure. There is a question here. Yes, Buan Abdallah, yes, I've seen your question. Says, thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Damulira. What more do you offer to students away from the school curriculum? What makes your school more attractive than others? I think that's a powerful question. I'll give Isaac an opportunity to ask his question, then you'll answer once, and then we will bring this home. Isaac, please go ahead. Isaac?
Yes. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Damulira, and your dear wife for helping us see the world better where you're coming from. I also run a school, training nurses and midwives, and I work with my wife too. But I want to ask this question. I don't know if you've come across a situation where while you're working so hard, you're busy running here and there, then somebody is reporting you to your spouse that, now you see, your husband seemed to have been taken over by another staff in the organization, or your wife seemed to be doing something like this, and it brings a lot of tension and chaos in the family and even at school. How do you manage that? Or did you ever come across such a thing? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isaac. I mean, gossip is one of it's a poison which can eat up any, and you as a family, I think it is. I think that's the question which Isaac is asking. How do you handle those messages? I know they will come up, and how do you make sure that you manage them well as a family, not to damage the family, but also the business? Mr. and Mrs. Damulira, please do address those questions.
Ronald, I didn't know you were bringing me to answer such tough questions.
It's Isaac's question, sir, not mine.
Well, I must say, if you are going to work together in business, you must believe in each other. Those moments will come, and sometimes they can be very disruptive. Somebody saying this one is working with this one. Those moments sometimes they come, especially on my side. When I was still working, the people I wanted to bring across, and sometimes they misunderstood and what went around. But the truth was there. there was nothing happening. So we managed to go through some of those issues. But I must say, business is the business. If fees collection has to be made, collections have to be made. We are very understanding people. We actually one of the things I've done is to read about running a Christian business. There's a gentleman who writes online and he says you don't have always to look for necessarily money. And we have been patient. We give so many privileges to parents. You pay, and we keep on asking until the term ends. So we are a bit lenient. We bring a Christian aspect to it, to business, but we are also serious on collection. We make sure we collect almost 98% of it. So this is something we do it in a soft way, but we are serious. Bringing a partner on board is a question that is very interesting also. To be honest, we didn't start only the two of us. We had about 3-4 people when we just started. One was a brother, another was one of my mentors, and we started together when we were building this idea. You know, when I got the idea, researched about it, said, no, this is a good idea, let's start. But what I've seen is we have different agenda. Somebody is looking for money, not willing to invest long term. Every year they want to take a little bit of it. Others are entirely dependent on that one. So it became a problem, and many of my colleagues decided to ask, and we paid them off, and they went out. So it remained our own business. The other friend of mine was a cousin, really. The wife said, no, these people are going, we shall never get money soon. We have our needs. Let's do our own things as well. So we started with that one. And my experience is, if you are going to do any partnering, it's important that each one of you has a separate set of income where you have some source of income for livelihood, and then you can invest a separate kind of arrangement. But for now, we are not looking forward to having a partner immediately. We are trying to do some other businesses with other friends, but independent of this school now. Decision making, how do we make a decision in school here? I think one aspect we do here is we have discussions by and large between me and my wife. Most of the times, if we are going to borrow, I will let her know. And she will sign all those requirements at the bank. I don't hide anything from her. She knows if we are going to buy land, why it is important, we agree on those ones. And we have not had major disagreements. But sometimes we may have disagreements on staffing. This one may go now, it may go tomorrow. At the end of the day, I'm the head. I'm the head of the home, and I'm head of the business. So the final decision at the end of the day remains with me. Michelle Damulira will raise her issues, but she recognizes somebody has to make the final decision. And there it comes to me. Bad or good, I take the final blame. I can be accused of delay. I can be accused of any other thing, but I finally take it. Research, we do research. I'm working with many colleagues in the education sector. We have our associations of private school owners. We have put up circles together. And each time we meet, part of the idea is to share, to connect, to know what the trends are, how students are reporting, what are the trends in schools now. We meet and chat. We do a lot of online research on how to manage people, how to grow from one level to another. That is something we continuously do to be on top of the game. We engage with the Ministry of Education and Sports, who are our regulators, and we keep up to date, latest curriculum. We are now going into Boyd, this bring your own device in schools. People bring computers and do research. We provide speed internet, and children can do all those researches. So those are areas we continuously do, and we keep on innovating. And we are now beginning to embrace these young people. They are very dynamic, the staff. Some of the new staff who have just graduated, they are into new modalities of teaching and learning. And we are really encouraging them to be great and to grow them. An area in Borough. But trust in business, my wife, I trust her. She trusts me. There are accounts where we can either sign. She can sign, I can sign alone, or she can sign alone. So that's a trust that you must have if you are going to work in a family business together. It's a challenge, but it is, you must trust your partner. It is something you are in. It's like a marriage, you are in it until death do you part. So it's business. You get to some level of understanding that at the end of the day, what is it for? I will do it, or I leave, my wife will be there, the children will be there. If she mismanages, fine, but let's trust each other. That the decisions we're making are for the good of the business. And I think that's faith and trust in each. Let Mr. Adam answer something.
I'm not going to answer some of the questions, but there's something that is very interesting when Mr. Damulira said that is the final person. And I probably want to send one to the ladies here. Massage your husband's ego and you'll have peace. Whether they make mistakes, I have a gentleman who shared with us, and I will not hesitate to mention, this is Dr. Lubuga. Dr. Lubuga, we're having a session with the marrieds, and all of us ladies were saying, but the men are too slow in making decisions. And he said, he is the man. Allow him to make those mistakes, allow him to take full responsibility. So when we're in a family business, for the ladies on the call, yes, some of us have very strong personalities. Some of us want to move a lot faster, but at the end of the day, you want some peace, allow your spouse to be, allow him to be the head and take full responsibility. Then the other thing is, somebody asked, what more do we offer for our students? We offer quite a wholesome package for the students, because like we've always said, we want to raise a holistic child. At the end of the day, if we're talking about a high achiever, it's not only in one respect, it's education. So we have so many things. We have inspiration nights, we have fellowships, we have clubs, we have games, we have music, dance, and drama. And what we have introduced that is very intentional is mentorship and career guidance, whereby we start off in senior one for a child to know what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, what their interests are, and what opportunities are available. So a child engages in a curriculum, but at the same time, they know who they are, what their potential is. One thing that I actually celebrate is that when you know, you know. And when you know what you're supposed to grow, you'll grow it and you'll be known for it. So a child will not navigate into the waters that where they're not meant to be, but they will follow their dreams according to who they were meant to be and called to be. And for me, that speaks excellency. So this is one of the things that we do. We are mentoring the teachers intentionally. We are mentoring the students intentionally. And I know it is, at the end of the day, we shall see the high achiever and the holistic child that we've always desired to see.
Wow, thank you so much. The hour and a half has run faster than we had hoped. It's already out, but we are very, very honored to have you, Mr. and Mrs. Damulira. Just allow me to request you to just make a couple of final remarks to the audience. We had an attendance of over 110 participants, one of the bigger size. Usually we expect about 50 people. So, I mean, it's amazing to see the people who have come through. But just share with us your final comments as we bring this to a close.
Well, thank you, Ronald. Thank you for inviting us to share our business with the fellow business people. And I must say that things are possible. You can grow a business. One of the things I've been telling people who came here, who trusted us for the first time, children who were here in 2003, when they come back, they see something big. And we tell them, that's a big lesson. You can start small and grow big. Actually, I remember one time when I was leaving the bank, somebody said, building a house, you've seen how we have been struggling to build a house. Now you are going to go into building a school. I can tell you these things are possible, and with honesty, you can do it with honesty, without cheating anybody. We have worked around the community. We buy land, but we compensate all the people. We give them better deals than they thought they would get. And it's possible. We don't have necessarily to focus too much on getting money. We have to build relationships as well that really matter. And people will run and will want work. So those are the parting words I can say for now. But I want to thank you once again for inviting us and giving us an opportunity to say what we do.
Thank you so much. I also say something small. Thank you so much, Ronald, for thinking about us and inviting us to share our experiences with all these people on the call. Like Mr. Damulira said, it is possible to have a business where spouses are working in that business and working
Oh, super. I think we lost Mr. and Mrs. Damulira there. Great, but a big thank you, team, which has joined the call. Thank you so much for being here. We are very honored, very, very honored to have each and every one of you. Thank you for kind of sharing your time with us. Madam Damulira, you're back. We missed a bit of final comment, so please just give us that comment again.
Yes, I was just saying that when it comes to organizational structure, respect everybody's working space. If it's your husband's working space, respect it. If it's your space, allow people to respect it. But when the respect that you give is the respect that you get back. So if it's the head teacher, even if you get an idea, but you know that this idea ought to be owned by the head teacher, allow them to run with it, or the deputy. Structure, and it's all only on paper. It should actually be in action. And with that, you're able to work together amicably. Thank you very much.
Super, super, super. A big thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Damulira. Thank you so much for sharing your hearts with us. It's been an amazing moment, a lot of feedback in the chat box. People saying thank you for sharing your heart and really being testimony to a possibility. When we see a husband and a wife working together, building such an amazing enterprise, it looks possible. And I know that for many of the young people here, when the thought of being married for more than 25 years is a bit scary. But the fact that the business is growing and the family is growing is an amazing step. So thank you so much. Send our love to the St. Mark family. Those of you who haven't interacted with St. Mark's College Namagoma, it's on Masaka Road, just after Nabingo. I think when you're coming down from right after Budo there, that's where the school is located. Please do take children to St. Mark's. I'm privileged to have one of my close friends has a daughter who is right there in S2 at St. Mark. But thank you so much. We are very, very honored to have you. There are many thank you messages coming in the chat box. I see thank you from Anne Musoke. Thank you from Alan Mugisha. Thank you from Sandra, from Mugume, from Susan. Thank you so much. Team who has joined, a big thank you for joining. We are very, very honored. The recording will be available if your friends have missed this call. Please do share with them the recording. We are going to share it with you in a moment on your emails. We'll be back next Thursday for the Business Recovery Series. As entrepreneurs keep pushing, today's message was particularly special for those of us who are running family businesses. Have a conversation. If your spouse didn't attend, send them the recording and tell them, you know what, here is a story of a couple and we can also be able to do things better. Thank you so much. Have a blessed rest of the day, and we'll be back next Thursday at 9 o'clock with the Business Recovery Series. Have a blessed day. Mr. and Mrs. Damulira, Thank you so much. Greet the St. Mark family and thank them for releasing you for this 1.5 hours to share with us. We are very honored.
Thank you.